Welcome, one and all. My name is Anna Lumpria, and I am a wayfinder. I work for the Cornwall Memory Cafe network, supporting carers and people living with dementia to access services, make referrals, and really help them find a way to get more support. This is part of Disability Cornwall, and we've decided to create this podcast interviewing experts and people with lived experience on dementia to be able to share all sorts of interesting and informative and supportive information. So sit back and enjoy, and also share the podcast with your friends. It's relaxed and inclusive and welcoming, and thank you for listening. Welcome, everybody. Today we have the wonderful Ellie Whitaker with us from TALKmoreCornwall, which is a CIC supporting all sorts of people to be able to communicate in the world. So I don't know very much about what you do and about your charity, Ellie. It's really lovely that you've given me this time, and the listeners this time to tell us all about what you do. So I'm going to hand it over to you. And first of all, can you tell us a little bit about TALKmoreCornwall and where it started and why you started it?
Okay, thanks for the invite. I really appreciate being able to spread the Makaton joy around Cornwall. I became a trainer, Makaton trainer in 2017 September, and I created TALKmoreCornwall, the Ltd limited company, as sole proprietor in probably about the February 2018. In 2019, Saskia retrained as a Makaton tutor, and once she got certified, we made the decision to become a CIC.
Right.
Mainly because we wanted to make Makaton and English as an additional language, which is my other other hat that I wear, a bit more accessible to people in Cornwall, because we quickly realised that a lot of people are on a fixed income. So becoming a CIC allowed us to kind of tap into funding to make sure that there were no financial barriers to people who wanted to learn Makaton. And we're both absolutely passionate that everybody deserves to have a voice, whether they speak English as an additional language or if they need Makaton to support, early in life or later in life.
And can you, for anyone that's not familiar with Makaton, can you describe to us what that is?
Makaton is a language program for people who have communication difficulties, and it uses signs, a lot of them taken from BSL, British Sign Language, and symbols, which are little black and white pictures. If you can see that one's for breakfast,
right,
and that one is for lunch.
Yeah.
And then you would sign it and use your hands to sign it. But you use your voice. In BSL, you don't use your voice. So with Makaton, you use your signs, use your symbols. You always use your voice, and you use a lot of facial expression. Most of our communication is from facial expression and gestures. So I think we use our hands to talk more than I think we do as British people.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, everybody goes to the pub and goes, "Do you want another drink or a packet of crisps?"
Yes, exactly.
So that's Makaton, and most people probably do it. Call me sometime.
So some of it's quite intuitive.
Yeah,
the
natural gestures. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you have found yourself into this career path and this really valuable offering, TALKcornwall, what's your history then? Why are you so interested in this? What's brought you to this work?
In 2012, I came back from Saudi Arabia. I'd been working out there for about 15 years. Married a Redruth guy, moved back home. I grew up here. And I trained to become a teacher. And I was introduced to Makaton as part of my teacher training course, my degree course. I kind of probably had the same reaction most people do. Is like, well, if we've got BSL, why do we need Makaton? You know, isn't it the same thing? And then I realized that because we're actually using the symbols like this, yeah, then I realized that Makaton is quite a powerful tool to have. And then I wanted to find out more about it. So I researched, found out more about Makaton, and decided that it needed to be accessible to people in Cornwall. When I started out, outside of Cornwall Council, there were 2 part-time Makaton tutors who supported a very small part of the community, and nobody was really supporting schools or parents if they were outside of the Cornwall Council purview.
Right.
I did my training in Liverpool. Then I went back up the following year to Manchester. Then I went to London for a week and became a tutor. And then I realised that, you know, we could probably do with the Makaton safeguarding package in Cornwall as well. And the nearest tutor that offered that was Bristol.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, this was 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
That's a lot for people in Cornwall who are on a fixed income, you know, as carers, to go north and do the training. So it was really important to me to kind of bring it into Cornwall and make it accessible. So, you know, I'm within an hour of, well, most places in Cornwall.
That's amazing.
So
I mean, questions.
Yeah.
One thing that stood out to me, I hope I remember all the questions. One thing was that you said it's very powerful, this style of language, that the symbols are very powerful, and that's what differentiated it, the symbols and the signs and the voice. Why is it powerful? Who would this be for? Why is it powerful?
Well, some of those symbols that I just showed you are part of a workshop that we deliver in Cornwall called Watch My Needs for people with dementia. So my heart is with older people. A lot of people understand Makaton has been used with early years, with late speaking children, or with non-verbal children with autism or learning difficulties. I think the older people who have had a stroke and it's impacted their speech, or people who have developed dementia and it's impacted their communication, would benefit from using Makaton as well. So then it becomes a, you know, cradle to grave kind of communication support program. It's the whole package. So for me, if you can see, this is a choice board. This is part of the dementia program. So for me, this gives people who probably didn't have much of a choice before, they can choose tea or coffee or water. They can choose juice or a biscuit. And we've seen people in our workshops who have been unable to communicate with their carer because they have been impacted by a later life medical event like dementia or stroke, be able to say, oh, could I have a cup of tea, but I don't want sugar and I want milk, you see? And then they have choice. So I've supported gentlemen who he's ex-RAF, competitive mountain biker, had a stroke in his 30s, wheelchair bound, very restricted, paraplegic, and you know, he was able to point to the pictures, and then he had a choice. We take it for granted. We just go in the kitchen and make ourselves a cup of tea. But if you can't communicate that, you know, it's like with little kids. They're having a tantrum and you don't know what they need, and you need to unpick it. And sometimes I think we forget to do that with older people or people who have developed a communication problem. You know, and yeah, I just think it's a really powerful tool for them to have. And then they have choice.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've got you've started to talk about this program that you're running then. Can you tell me more about this?
tell me more about this program or the workshop that you run. Who are you running it for? Is it accessible for people from the public to join? How would we learn if we wanted to?
Okay, the Watch My Needs workshop was designed by a GP whose husband had dementia for other people who have dementia later in life as a communication aid. You know, like I just showed you with the choice board for refreshments, so that, you know, you're in your home and you can have a voice, you can have a choice about what you eat. You're not just given, you know, what they think you want, kind of thing. And I think that's a little bit of dignity, a little bit of independence as well.
Totally.
I met with the Admiral nurses at Trelisk with this workshop in September, I think it was last year. And they said their number one issue with the carers that they support is communication. They don't know what's wrong with the person they're looking after. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they need. And when I showed them the program, you know, with the signs and the symbols, and explained how the workshop worked, they was like, this solves our problem. Wow. You know, that now we can roll it out to, you know, our carers to use with their loved one that has dementia or has had a stroke and things. So the way it's designed is 5 1.5 hour sessions in like a cafe style, you know, like Memory Cafe works. You know, you go and you have your cake and your biscuit or your cup of tea, do a little bit of an activity, have another cup of tea and a slice of cake, then you kind of wrap it up. We've done this in a small group. So you can do it in a small group with 10 carers and 10 people that have dementia. I have done it in homes privately with the husband and wife. Wow. And really tailored. This is where these came from. Rather than a choice board, he was quite overwhelmed. We cut it down to 2 things. So he'd have like hot and cold, yes and no, I'm okay, I'm bad, you know, like he's feeling poorly or something. Hearing aid, glasses, you know, and there's trousers and shirt. There's your trousers and there's your shirt. So he could choose, you know, what he wanted to wear of a day. So it is customizable. We had one gentleman preferred his brandy rather than the wine, so we changed out the symbol for him so that he could choose his brandy of an evening. The care homes would also benefit from this, because they can use it for labeling their cupboards. They can use it for communication with their residents, and a lot of the carers that I have talked to over the last few months have said, you know, are the care homes going to do this? And I thought, yes, I would love to, because then the transition from home to care homes a lot smoother. Yes. Right. So in a care home, I can do it in a day. Yeah, we can deliver it online. We can do it face to face. I can do it one-to-one. I can do it in a small group setting. It has to work for the people that I'm supporting. And I will find a way to do that. I had one gentleman, he looked at this one, just to go back to this one, and he found it quite overwhelming. There was too much information on it. Yeah. So it was a lot easier just to have tea and coffee. Yes. Right. So, and we have that ability to be able to do that, to support people in a way that works for them.
Does that make sense? Yeah, and this sounds like you're talking about a vision for the future. And before I go there with you, I just want to recap or go back to this Admiral nurses and the work that you're doing with them. So is this a regular thing that's happening now, or is this where there's a sort of community or a group of people being pulled together and then going, right, we're going to run this course again?
At the moment, I would have to say no. We would love that to happen. Yeah. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, a lot of it is around funding. Yeah. It's getting that funding to be able to offer this to people. Otherwise, they can come to us and pay privately. So there's different options. It's really affordable. It's like £50 for 2 people.
That's amazing.
And they get the manual. So this is the manual for the Watch My Needs workshop, and it has all of the resources in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I just open it and I can show you a page. So these are the signs and symbols, and I teach the signs here, and then the symbols are on like a choice board at the end of the block, like I just showed you with the drinks.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And then you have the feelings choice board, which looks like this.
Wow. Yeah.
And, for the gentleman I was supporting, I put happy and sad. Is he hot and cold? Is he in pain, or is he hungry? Because sometimes they sound the same,
Yes.
Anecdotally, we had a gentleman on one of our very first workshops last year, and his wife said, I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong with him. And in the session, they learned about pain, and you just kind of wave your hand. It's like heartache, it's over here, right? Or my shoulder hurts. Yeah. And during the coffee break, he went like this.
And she said,
you've got pain in your mouth. He had an abscess for like 3 months, and he had been unable to communicate that. And within 5 minutes,
wow.
he just went like that.
Wow.
So when I say it's powerful, it really is. It's life-changing.
That really is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing. So your vision then for the future, what would, in a perfect world for Cornwall, what would you love to see be happening?
I would love to see anybody who cares for anybody with a communication problem, whether it be dementia or whether it's somebody who's had a stroke later in life, that the hospitals are trained to use Makaton as inpatients.
That's big, isn't it?
And that people go home with a care package that includes Makaton training for the carers at home.
Yeah.
And I've already talked to the a couple of inpatient units at Trelisk about this, but again, it all comes back to funding. But that would be my big goal. There's 1,000 people in Cornwall, a year that have a stroke. 1,000 a year. And there's like 5,000 people, I think it is at the moment, that are diagnosed with dementia, but there's probably double that hasn't been diagnosed.
Yeah.
That are struggling. And I think as a matter of dignity for older people, Makaton gives them back that dignity.
Absolutely. And there's so much I hear as a wayfinder going in and speaking with people who've been in hospital, their loved ones have been in hospital, they've become ill and they're living with dementia, and there's a sort of understanding of how overwhelming and confusing and busy a hospital can be, and how valuable it would be to be able to have simple sign and language to get your needs met.
And if we're an inclusive society, we should be using Makaton. We should be. If anybody has a communication language difficulty for whatever reason, we should be using Makaton as a society, because it works. And it's, yeah. I mean, can you imagine? I always go back to early years. The TAs are trained to use Makaton with their one-to-one child, but who does that child talk to when the TA is not there? How do they talk to other people? Can they talk to their peers? Can they talk to the lunch lady? Can they talk to other teachers? And if you're limited to that one person, then that is your whole world, right? But if we normalize Makaton, and this is my big dream, cafes, restaurants, bed and breakfasts, employers, shops,
institutions like hospitals and
organizations. If we started rolling this out, then that Makaton user could talk to the fireman who's doing the home check, could talk to the person in the shop when they're asking if they can help them, right? And all it needs is one person in the shop, one person on shift with the fire department or the police. And I mean, that leads me into another thing that I'm really passionate about is blue light workers.
Yes.
I think the latest statistic in Cornwall is 75% of people that go missing in Cornwall have dementia or a learning disability. So how important is it to be able to communicate them when you find them? You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm quite passionate about it.
You really are. Yeah, it's it does seem to be just it must be a given, as you say, that that everybody could learn it at school. That's what I was going to ask. It went through my mind for a moment, is how easy is it to learn? Like how many?
Really easy. I did a workshop with some hospitality organizations a few weeks ago, like a little taster session, and they all looked terrified when they came in, and that's normal. That we get that every workshop. That first 5 minutes they're like, don't give us an exam, and I'm like, listen, you'll be doing sentences in like an hour, and they're like, no, and we teach the signs and symbols. And then we start working on the sentences, and the feedback is always, oh, that was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. Makaton uses keywords, so that's the words in the sentence that have the most information.
Got you.
So if it's a cup of tea, it's, do you want a cup of tea? You see, so you're only signing two things.
That's amazing.
So BSL has its own syntax, and it doesn't use the voice, so you miss all that additional language that we use that's non-verbal or verbal, and plus the gestures, and that's why I said that's why it's. And then the other thing you can do at home is we give people little ones like this. Put it on the outside of your fridge, put it on the outside of your cupboard.
That's genius.
If it's sugar. So you've got sugar, you can put it on the outside of the cupboard that's got sugar. You've got tea, and you can put that on the cupboard, because what happens when you close the cupboard door?
It's not visible anymore.
Not visible.
Yeah.
So that way you can label your cupboards, and again that goes to independence and dignity in as you get older.
Yeah, being able to find what you need to find. It's genius. It is really good.
Makaton's been around. We celebrated 50 years a couple of years ago, and it started off in residential hospitals for your adults with learning difficulties. But yeah, I discovered really early on in my Makaton career that it's going to be so much more useful for everybody, every stage in life.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine if you've got dementia and you're coming down from up north on a holiday in Cornwall, and the bed and breakfast uses Makaton, the restaurant you go to uses Makaton, the tourist attraction that you wanted to go to uses Makaton, and you can engage with everything. How much better your holiday is going to be.
Yeah, and like you say, like a quality of life.
Yeah,
feeling included, feeling like you can participate fully.
Your mental health gets better.
Yeah.
Recent studies, I was at the Cornwall Dementia Conference the other week, and they said there that one of the ways to reduce the impact of dementia is to learn a new language, because it fires up the brain cells, it gets the oxygen going in your brain, and it offsets the dementia, and it's quite a hefty percentage. So there are things that we can do as we get older that will offset the dementia. Hearing aids, make sure it's in and on so you can hear what's being said. Makaton, obviously, because it gives you a visual cue as well as the gestures and the voice. Exercise, diet, these all impact on dementia. But the number one thing was to learn a new language, fire up those neurons.
Yeah, and communication, like having that stimulation of communication with people.
Mhm.
If you haven't got that language capability, and you haven't got Makaton, and you haven't got that language capability, you're kind of in your own world, and
I was
that
going to say,
apparently creates
and
the
then there's no
dementia as well.
stimulation, and your dementia progresses a lot quicker. And this is what research is finding now. Current research is that when people go into care homes, because they don't need to think about anything, their dementia progresses really, really quickly. If they were at home and they had to think about, going to the bathroom by themselves, or making a cup of tea by themselves and getting dressed, or buying groceries or cooking food, it keeps those neurons moving. When you go into a care home and they do that all for you, that part, it almost shuts down. So, if Makaton can keep people at home longer, there is going to come a point in a dementia journey that, you do need that care home support. But let's make that as smooth as possible, as less stressful as possible, reduce the agitation, improve mental health for everybody.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So is there anything else? Is there anything else you want to let us know about? Anything up and coming that people might be able to join? Anything that we might
If people would
benefit
like,
from?
if people would like to learn more about the Makaton, they can contact us at Talk More Cornwall, where they can search us on the internet. We will pop right up. You can look for us on Facebook.
Yeah.
The upcoming events, I'm working on a dementia carers choir with the Admiral nurses, and we're going to try and do it in Truro once a month. I need to find a nice venue for that.
That sounds incredible.
So we're kind of, I tried one in Redruth in May, and it didn't really work. So now we're going to kind of restructure it and relaunch it.
That sounds incredible.
In Truro, hopefully. So that might.
Yeah, you need somewhere with a car park that's easy to park.
Well, yeah, where the Admiral nurses are thinking doesn't have a car park, but it's the park and ride stops right outside.
Oh, that's all right.
So
then that's good. That's good.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's not just for dementia carers. That's what we've called it. I mean, anybody who supports anybody with a communication difficulty can come, but it will be in an afternoon, once a month at some point. So I can let you know more about that once we've got it ironed out.
And if people are listening, they can join. Do you have a newsletter that people could join?
Actually, we don't at the moment. It's one of those things that I'm working on, but they can like our Facebook page.
Perfect.
The community sign-in choirs that we hold weekly are also on Facebook. Community sign-in choirs, they can look for that. It'll come up in Cornish, but it's got English subtitles.
So and this is your page called Talk More Cornwall on Facebook. Talk More Cornwall on Facebook, yes. Okay. And community sign-in choirs, we've got one in Penzance, one in Redruth, and one in St Austell. We meet weekly. And yeah, hopefully the launch of the Dementia Carers Choir in Truro. Watch this space. I'm working on. That sounds incredible. Yeah. That will be what a joyful experience. And really it's a fun way. It's a fun way to learn Makaton as well. Yeah. I think it's a really good way to learn. Yeah, because we learn. I think even from children, we're learning singing and actions together right from the word go, aren't we? Yeah. So I think there's less cognitive load when you use your hands to communicate. Wow. When you're speaking, it uses a lot more of your brain. So if you wanted to reduce that cognitive load, then Makaton ticks that box. Amazing. And it almost becomes muscle memory rather than something you have to remember here, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does, because I would imagine, I think I said this at the beginning, I would imagine that a lot of the symbols and signs are common sense, that what you might intuitively do anyway, like you were saying, or give me a ring, or
Yeah.
oh, I'm gasping for a cup of tea.
How many times you been in the pub? Do you want a pint? Yeah, here. There you go.
Yeah.
So it's it's. I think we could do more as a county to support people with communication difficulties, and we're working on some projects at TALKmore to kind of do that. But yeah, my golden egg, my passion is the dementia and stroke. My background before I became a teacher was neurosciences. I was a medical secretary for 20 years. Wow. So I understand how that all fits together. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really does.
I mentioned going to the Cornwall Dementia Conference last week. I had the chance to talk to quite a few professionals and show them the workshop and how it works, nurses at Trelisk and GPs and care homes. And you know, as soon as I explained the course to them, they were just like, why aren't we doing this? You know, we need to be doing this to support our users.
Definitely.
So yeah, I just keep knocking on doors.
Absolutely.
If anybody's interested, they can just contact us.
Yes, Ellie. So if listeners out there, if you work in a particular sector of supporting people that live with dementia, people that have had strokes, whether you run community spaces, you can reach out to Ellie Whitaker with TALKmore Cornwall on either the Facebook, which will put all the details in the links from this recording, or reach out to you via email or on your website. You might be in the services in the fire brigade, or who knows, and it's usually one person in one place that says this is really meaningful, and they make it happen. Yep. I've noticed that with my life. It's like, we need this in our space, in our department, in our ward or whatever, and then they make it happen for the whole ward.
We cover the whole of Cornwall, and we'll make it work for your business model. Yeah. Brilliant. If you want face-to-face, 2 mornings a week, make it work. We'll come to you. We can do it online. But I know the older demographic don't like being online training. They prefer the face-to-face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is fine. So we can be as flexible as everybody needs us to be.
Amazing.
Does that make sense? So we can do it online, we can do it face-to-face. I can come to you. We work from home, so can't come to us.
Excellent. Oh, thank you, Ellie. Thank you so much. It's been a total pleasure. I've learned so much, and thank you on behalf of all our audience, and
you're welcome.
I'm sure they will be learning a lot from our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
This video was produced by Discover Voices, part of Disability Cornwall and Isles of Scilly. To check out all of our content, simply search Discover Voices on YouTube.